She never imagined her life would change because of a job she almost refused to take. At 38 floors above Madrid, where glass walls swallowed the sky and success hummed quietly in the air, Matthias Urrutia sat behind a desk made of Italian walnut and lost his first real battle in years. His fingers pressed hard against the bridge of his nose, a habit he had developed only after grief rewrote his life. Across from him, his longtime friend and minor business partner, Ricardo Benitez, lounged on a leather sofa, far too amused for the seriousness of the situation. 12, Ricardo said, holding up his fingers like a scoreboard. 12 nannies. 6 months. Matthias exhaled sharply. I know how to count. 1 every 2 weeks, Ricardo continued, smiling. You're officially blacklisted by every elite nanny agency in the city. Matthias leaned back, jaw tightening. At 6'3", impeccably dressed and known across Europe as a ruthless corporate strategist, he was used to control. Companies bet. Boards obeyed. Markets reacted. Everything followed his rules, except his 6-year-old daughter, Carmen. She's not difficult, Matthias said coldly. She's intelligent. She's a tactical genius, Ricardo corrected. She psychologically dismantles grown women before lunch. Matthias didn't respond. His eyes drifted to the framed photograph on his desk. Laura. His wife. Carmen's mother. Gone 3 years now, leaving behind a house full of money, silence, and a child who had learned that everyone eventually disappeared. You have a Tokyo merger in 10 days, Ricardo said more gently. You can't cancel again. Matthias closed his eyes. Carmen had sabotaged every nanny since Laura's death. Glue traps, fake insects, midnight alarms, emotional warfare so precise it bordered on genius. But Matthias understood something the agencies didn't. Carmen wasn't cruel. She was afraid. My wife's cousin, Ricardo said carefully. Her name is Daniela Cabrera. 10 years of experience. Never fired. Ever. Matthias raised an eyebrow. There's always a catch. She's quiet. Not the type you intimidate easily. Kids adore her. Matthias checked his watch, a Patek Philippe Laura had given him on their last anniversary. He needed a solution, not hope. Send her tomorrow. 9 sharp. Daniela Cabrera arrived exactly on time. That was the first thing that went wrong. She stepped into the penthouse living room guided by a uniformed butler and immediately felt the weight of wealth pressing in from every direction. Marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Furniture that looked more like art than something meant to be touched. And at the center of it all sat Matthias Urrutia, not bothering to stand. He studied her like a business acquisition. 26, he estimated. Brown hair pulled into a simple ponytail. No heavy makeup. Black slacks, white blouse. Professional but modest. Too modest for his world. His brain betrayed him with an unwanted observation. She was beautiful, but in a way that didn't demand attention. The kind that sneaked up on you. Sit, he said, gesturing without warmth. Daniela perched on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped tightly in her lap. He noticed the tension immediately. You've dealt with difficult children, he said. All children can be difficult, Daniela replied softly. It depends how they're treated. Matthias leaned forward. My daughter has destroyed 12 nannies in 6 months. What makes you think you'll survive more than 3 days? Daniela swallowed. Her face flushed, but she didn't look away. I can't promise it will be easy, she said. But sometimes the problem isn't the child. Silence snapped tight between them. Matthias's eyes narrowed. Explain. Sometimes, Daniela continued, her voice trembling but steady, children act out when they don't feel safe enough to be honest. No one spoke to him like that. Ever. For a moment, Matthias thought she would apologize. She didn't. Her hands shook slightly, but her gaze held his. Something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. Not anger. Interest. You're hired, he said abruptly. 1-week trial. Daniela blinked. Really? I don't repeat myself. As she left, Matthias watched her go, unaware of the faint smile pulling at his lips. Monday morning, Daniela moved into the guest room with a single suitcase and a knot of fear in her stomach. Her grandmother, Amparo, had insisted on packing homemade cookies like emotional armor. That man is lonely, Amparo had said knowingly. And lonely men are dangerous in love. Daniela had rolled her eyes then. Now, standing in the hallway, she heard small footsteps approaching. Carmen appeared in the doorway, dark hair falling in waves, eyes sharp and assessing. You're number 13, Carmen said flatly. Daniela crouched to her level. 13's my lucky number. Carmen frowned. The others said that too. Daniela smiled gently. Then maybe they weren't lucky enough. Something flickered behind Carmen's eyes, then vanished. The war began immediately. Glue on chairs, plastic insects, alarms, tangled clothes, sabotage with the precision of a mastermind. And Daniela didn't react. She cleaned. She adapted. She stayed. From his office, Matthias watched everything through security cameras. He expected tears by noon. They never came. That's new, Ricardo muttered. She's not quitting, Matthias said quietly. No, Ricardo agreed. She's staying. That night, Daniela knocked on Carmen's door. What do you really want? Daniela asked, sitting on the floor. I want you to leave, Carmen whispered. Before I start caring. Daniela's heart cracked. What if I don't? Carmen's eyes filled with tears. They all leave. Daniela told her the truth. About her own mother. About fear disguised as anger. About staying. They made a deal. 1 week. From that moment on, everything shifted. Carmen still tested her, but now she watched Daniela's face, searching not for weakness but for proof. Proof that someone could stay. By Friday night, Matthias came home early. He froze at the sound of laughter. His daughter and the nanny were dancing in pajamas, popcorn everywhere, joy filling spaces that had been dead for years. Carmen dragged him into the chaos. Rules were made. Ties were banned. Songs were sung badly. And for the first time since Laura's death, Matthias felt something loosen inside him. Oh, maybe something more. The strangest thing about peace was how loud it felt. Daniela noticed it on Saturday morning when she woke before her alarm and realized there was no dread waiting in her chest. No anticipation of traps or cruelty. Just silence. Safe, unfamiliar silence. Downstairs, Carmen was already awake, sitting on the kitchen counter swinging her legs, watching Daniela like she was trying to solve a puzzle that no longer scared her. You didn't leave, Carmen said. Daniela smiled. I told you I wouldn't. Carmen nodded once as if marking an important fact in her mind. From the hallway, Matthias paused. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but something about that simple exchange tightened his throat. His daughter wasn't bracing for abandonment. She was learning trust. And somehow this quiet young woman, this nanny everyone underestimated, had done what money, discipline, and authority never could. She stayed. They spent the day together. Not as employer, employee, and child, but as something dangerously close to a family. The park. Ice cream. Laughter. Carmen's hand in Daniela's. Matthias watching from the side, telling himself he was only observing for Carmen's sake. He was lying. That night, after Carmen fell asleep, Daniela sat alone in her room, staring at the ceiling, her heart racing with emotions she refused to name. Gratitude, she told herself. Relief. Professional satisfaction. But her mind betrayed her with images, gray eyes softening, a rare smile meant only for her, a touch that lingered just long enough to be noticed. Don't, she whispered to herself. He's your boss. The corporate dinner was announced Sunday evening. Matthias explained it with formality, as if that could erase the tension already simmering between them. Executives. Families. Appearances. Carmen wants to go, he said. And you want me there? Daniela replied carefully. He nodded once. She trusts you. That wasn't the real reason. Monday morning, Daniela was sent shopping in a luxury district she had only ever passed through on buses. Dresses cost more than her monthly rent. She called her grandmother in a panic. If he's investing in you, Amparo said firmly, it's because he sees value. Let him. Daniela chose à simplement dress. Elegant. Respectful. Not flashy. She wanted to belong, but not pretend. When she returned, she found a woman sitting far too comfortably in the living room. Sofia Roldan. She was everything Daniela was not, polished, commanding, dressed in red power and confidence. Her smile was sharp. Her gaze colder. So you're the nanny, Sofia said, the word tasting like dust in her mouth. Daniela felt the difference instantly. Status. Hierarchy. Judgment. And Matthias did nothing to stop it. That silence hurt more than words. The dinner itself was a battlefield disguised as elegance. Daniela felt eyes on her the moment she entered. Some curious. Some dismissive. Some amused. A nanny at the main table. Whispers followed her steps. She doesn't belong here. She's staff. She's temporary. Carmen squeezed her hand harder. Matthias noticed everything. The glances. The condescension. The way Daniela's shoulders tightened but her chin stayed high. Respect, he realized, wasn't something she demanded. She embodied it. Sophia tried to reclaim control, touching Matthias, interrupting Daniela. Subtle insults disguised as politeness. Daniela never retaliated with cruelty. She responded with grace. When Sophia implied she was unaccustomed to refined environments, Daniela smiled and replied, "True. I'm accustomed to sincerity instead." The table went quiet. Ricardo nearly choked on his wine. And Matthias, God help him, felt pride bloom in his chest. Then came the dance. Matthias extended his hand, knowing every eye was watching. Daniela hesitated only a second before accepting. On the dance floor, the world narrowed to breath and music and a truth neither of them could deny any longer. "I like when you laugh," he said quietly. "It reminds me that life didn't end." Daniela's heart stumbled. Matthias. He didn't touch her beyond what was proper. But it was worse. He looked at her like he was afraid of losing something he had already claimed in his heart. From across the room, Sophia watched, calculating, smiling. This wasn't over. That night, as Daniela lay awake, she understood the danger she was in. Not of losing her job, but of losing herself to a love she had no right to ask for. And downstairs, Matthias stared at the ceiling too, realizing the most terrifying truth of all. He wasn't afraid of falling in love again. He was afraid of what would happen when the world tried to remind Daniela she didn't belong beside him. The shift was subtle at first. Daniela felt it in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room. In the way smiles didn't quite reach eyes. In the polite nods that were really judgments disguised as courtesy. Madrid's elite didn't shout their contempt. They whispered it. The Monday after the corporate dinner, Matthias left early for the office, preparing for his Tokyo trip. Carmen went to school. Daniela was left alone in a house that suddenly felt colder, larger, and more aware of her presence. She tried to ignore it. Until the phone rang. "Daniela Cabrera?" a crisp female voice asked. "Yes. This is Human Resources at Urrutia Corporation. We need to clarify your role." Daniela's stomach tightened. "My role? There seems to be some confusion regarding your presence at executive functions and your proximity to the CEO." The words were sharp, measured, weaponized. "I'm the living caregiver for his daughter," Daniela replied calmly. "I attend events when Carmen requires supervision." There was a pause. "And your educational background?" Daniela frowned. "I don't see how that's relevant." "We do," the woman replied coolly. "Thank you for your cooperation." The call ended. Daniela sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding. She knew that tone. It wasn't curiosity. It was judgment. By Wednesday, the whispers became bolder. At the school gate, other parents stared openly. Some smiled with fake warmth. Others didn't bother pretending. One woman leaned toward another and murmured loudly, "Must be nice. Climbing social ladders through childcare." Daniela heard it. She kept walking. That afternoon, Carmen came home unusually quiet. "What happened?" Daniela asked gently. "They said you're only here because you're pretending to be nice to my dad," Carmen whispered. "That you'll leave once you get what you want." Daniela knelt in front of her. "And what do you think?" Carmen hesitated, then shook her head fiercely. "You wouldn't do that." Daniela hugged her tightly, fighting tears. The cruelty wasn't aimed at her. It was aimed through her. That night, Sophia Roldan made her move. She arrived unannounced at the penthouse while Matthias was still at the office. Perfect makeup. Perfect smile. Perfect timing. "I thought we should talk," Sophia said smoothly, settling into the sofa like she owned it. Woman to woman. Daniela stood near the doorway, pulse racing. "About?" "About knowing your place." The words landed hard. "You're talented," Sophia continued. "Clever. But this world." She gestured around. "It eats people like you alive." "I'm not trying to be part of your world," Daniela replied quietly. Sophia smiled. "You already are. And you don't even realize how exposed you look." Daniela didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply said, "I'm here for Carmen." Sophia leaned forward. "You're here because you think you matter to him." Daniela felt the sting, but she didn't flinch. "You don't?" Sophia finished. That was when Carmen walked in. She looked between them, sensing tension instantly. "I matter," Carmen said firmly. "And Daniela matters to me." Sophia laughed softly. "Children don't decide these things." Carmen's eyes hardened. "My mom said people who look down on others are afraid of being seen." Sophia straightened, startled. Children were unpredictable weapons. The real blow came 2 days later. An anonymous complaint was filed. Negligence. Inappropriate behavior. Boundary concerns. Daniela was summoned to a formal review, without warning. She sat alone in a glass conference room while 3 executives scanned documents that painted her as opportunistic, unqualified, and dangerous. She's overstepping. She's manipulating the child. She's exploiting grief. Daniela listened in silence, hands folded, spine straight. Then the door opened. Matthias stepped in. The room froze. "What is this?" he asked, voice dangerously calm. Sophia entered behind him, wearing innocence like perfume. "Just ensuring company integrity," she said sweetly. Matthias turned to the executives. "You're questioning the woman who rebuilt my daughter's emotional stability while you sit behind desks?" Silence. Daniela looked at him, stunned. "I vetted her," Matthias continued. "Personally. And any further harassment will be addressed as corporate misconduct." The executives shifted uncomfortably. Sophia's smile cracked. Outside, Daniela finally broke. "I don't want to cause problems," she whispered. Matthias stepped closer. "You didn't. But I don't belong here." He looked at her then, not as employer to Nanny, not as CEO to staff, but as a man who had finally seen truth. "You belong wherever you choose to stand," he said quietly. And that was the moment Daniela realized the danger was no longer external. It was her heart. Sophia watched from afar, fury burning behind her eyes. If Daniela Cabrera wanted to play in a world of power, she would teach her the cost. Power, Daniela learned, was loud when it was insecure. The shift from whispers to outright confrontation happened on a Thursday afternoon, when the school held its annual charity fundraiser. Parents gathered in tailored suits and polished smiles, donations announced publicly like trophies. Daniela stood near the back, holding Carmen's hand, invisible to most, except to those who wanted her gone. Sophia arrived late, dressed in confidence and crimson, her presence commanding immediate attention. She greeted executives, kissed cheeks, laughed loudly, and made sure Daniela noticed her every move. Then she took the microphone. "I'd like to thank Urrutia Corporation," Sophia began smoothly, "for its commitment to integrity, ethics, and appropriate boundaries." Daniela felt Carmen's grip tighten. "And," Sophia continued, "for ensuring that personal relationships never compromise professional judgment." The implication hung in the air like poison. Eyes turned. Daniela's face burned. Before she could move, Carmen stepped forward. "My nanny is not inappropriate," Carmen said loudly. A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. "She helped me stop being scared at night. She helped me talk about my mom. She didn't leave when I was mean." The room fell silent. Children had a way of cutting through lies. Sophia forced a smile. "Sweetheart, this isn't the time." "It is," Carmen insisted. "Because you're lying." Gasps followed. Daniela tried to pull Carmen back, but Matthias had already reached them. "That's enough," he said firmly, his presence commanding instant attention. But Sophia wasn't finished. "She's using your grief," Sophia said calmly, her voice carrying. "You're blinded by emotion, Matthias." The words were meant to humiliate. They backfired. Matthias turned to the crowd. "The only blindness here is arrogance." Then he did something no one expected. He handed the microphone to Daniela. Daniela froze. Matthias leaned close. "You don't owe anyone silence." The room waited. Daniela took a breath. "I never asked to be here," she said softly. "I came to care for a child who was hurting. I stayed because love doesn't leave when it gets inconvenient." Her voice strengthened. "I didn't climb anything. I didn't manipulate anyone. And I will not apologize for kindness." The silence was thunderous. Then applause. Not polite claps. Real ones. Sophia's smile shattered. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, emails circulated. Screenshots. Recorded conversations. HR complaints traced back to Sophia's office. It turned out she had abused her position before. This time there were witnesses. Matthias called an emergency board meeting. Sophia arrived confident. She left escorted. Her reputation collapsed faster than her composure. Karma didn't scream. It documented. That night, Daniela packed her suitcase. Not because she was fired. Because she was scared. Matthias found her in the hallway. "Are you leaving?" he asked quietly. "I don't want to be the reason your world burns," she replied. He stepped closer. "You didn't burn it. You exposed it." She nodded. "That's worse." He reached out, but stopped himself. Respect mattered. "Stay," he said simply. "Not for me. For Carmen." Daniela hesitated. Then Carmen appeared, eyes red. "Don't leave," she whispered. I finally feel safe. Daniela knelt and hugged her tightly. I'm staying, she promised. But something had shifted. Love was no longer quiet. It was undeniable. That night, Matthias stood alone on his balcony watching the city lights. He wasn't afraid of scandal. He was afraid of wanting something real again. And losing it. Peace arrived quietly, the way truth often does after chaos has burned itself out. The house felt different the morning after Sophia's removal. Not tense. Not guarded. Lighter. As if the walls themselves had exhaled after years of holding their breath. Daniela moved through the kitchen preparing breakfast while Carmen hummed beside her, coloring at the table. There were no traps. No tests. No hidden fears behind mischievous eyes. Just calm. Matthias watched them from the doorway, realizing that this ordinary moment, was something no boardroom victory had ever given him. Normal happiness. Later that day the official notice arrived. Sophia Roldan's termination was permanent. Investigations into her conduct expanded beyond the company. The same power she once used to belittle others now exposed her. Instant karma didn't roar. It removed the mask. Matthias closed the email and looked at Daniela. I should have protected you sooner, he said. Daniela shook her head gently. You did. When it mattered. He hesitated, then spoke with honesty that scared him more than any merger ever had. I don't want to pretend anymore. Daniela felt her breath catch. You came into this house to care for my daughter, Matthias continued. And somehow you taught me how to live again. She didn't interrupt. I don't know what the future looks like, he admitted. But I know I don't want one where you're not in it. Silence stretched, not painful but full. Daniela finally spoke. I was afraid you'd see me as temporary. He stepped closer. You're the most permanent thing in my life right now. Tears slipped down her cheeks. They didn't rush. They didn't grab. They simply leaned into the truth. And when he kissed her, it wasn't desperation. It was respect. Carmen watched from the stairs, smiling knowingly. Later that night, she crawled into Daniela's lap with a book. So, she said casually, does this mean you're staying forever? Daniela smiled softly. If you'll have me. Carmen hugged her tightly. I already chose you. Months passed. The media buzz faded. The scandal disappeared. But something far more important remained. Matthias stopped hiding behind work. Daniela stopped doubting her worth. And Carmen, once guarded and fearful, laughed freely again. At a school event, a woman whispered, Isn't that the nanny? Another replied, That's the woman who rebuilt a family. Daniela heard it. She smiled. On a quiet evening as the sun dipped below Madrid's skyline, Matthias held Daniela's hand on the balcony. You know, he said, they all underestimated you. Daniela laughed softly. They still do. He kissed her hand. Let them. Because the greatest revenge was never status. It was love, dignity, and a life well lived.